elected last year as county executive, I reminded my staff that though we had just come off a long and very difficult campaign, the hard part was just beginning, governing. Governing is about choices, and when considering those choices, you must choose to do what is right, though difficult, over what is easy but wrong. Last year I heard the message loud and clear from the public. They demand certain quality of life services be funded, regardless of what mandates and demands we have from Washington and Albany. These quality of life programs may not be mandated by the state and federal government, but they are mandated by the residents and taxpayers of Erie County. In October, I proposed a budget for 2013 that maintains these services while also acknowledging the hard fiscal realities that face us in Erie County. This budget is fair and responsible, and it is structurally balanced. Facts that both the Erie County Comptroller and the Erie County Fiscal Stability Authority have already attested to. My proposed 2013 budget is balanced because we had to cut $20 million out of it, use $5.4 million of fund balance as approved by the Control Board, and proposes a 3.4% property tax increase to raise the last $8 million out of a $33 million budget gap that we were presented with. This massive budget gap was created by the perfect storm of new state and federal mandates along with declining revenues in our property tax. I did what was right and fiscally responsible, even though it was politically difficult. No one wants to raise property taxes, including me, but it was the right thing to do to provide the mandated services that the public demands. However, unfortunately, several legislators have presented an amendment to my budget that does what is easy and what is wrong. The red-green fiscal crisis wasn't one of bad luck, caused by forces outside of the control of elected officials. It was a crisis of leadership because of an executive and a legislature that refused to make difficult decisions. Decisions completely within their power to make year after year. Over the course of several years, they consistently chose the easy road over what was right, though difficult. Some legislators have continued to say that they will avoid a property tax increase at all costs under any circumstances, no matter what. Facts don't seem to matter to those individuals. And at this point, it appears maybe their minds are made up, regardless of the long-term consequences. Haven't we heard enough of that coming out of Congress recently? I respect the legislature's role in the process and the right to amend the budget, so long as any decreases in revenues or increases in spending are compensated for by real spending cuts in the budget. However, instead of proposing an amendment, they have decided they want it both ways. They won't vote to increase property tax revenues, but they also won't make real cuts in the budget. Instead, they came up with a sort of gimmicks and phony budgeting that resulted in the red-green fiscal crisis. The amendments submitted by legislators Mills, Dixon, Hardwick, Lorigo, Loughran, and Rath doesn't actually reduce costs. Their amendment deletes appropriations on paper, while the county will still have to pay for those expenses and incur those costs in 2013. It's as if you set a budget in which you said your heating bills are going to be $100, so you use $120 worth of heat. You have to pay for the heat, even if you don't want to. That's not leadership. That would be doing what's easy but wrong. And unfortunately, that's exactly what the budget proposed amendments, as the 6 legislators have proposed, would do. That, in my eyes, is nothing more than a sad pre-election year tradition of trying to make everyone happy at the same time without really making the difficult choices that are necessary. These legislators may choose to bury their heads in the sand and not acknowledge the true fiscal realities that we're facing. But I will not do that. I was elected to lead and conduct responsible and fair budgeting, and that's what I have done. When it comes to choosing the right path for the people of Erie County, I would rather do what's difficult though right over what is easy but wrong, regardless of the long-term political consequences. Unfortunately, some legislators are proposing to take the easy path, though the wrong one. The vote the legislature will take tomorrow is not a vote for or against a tax increase, or for that matter, quality of life programs. But the vote that they will be casting is for or against an unbalanced budget and the possibility of a hard control board. The vote tomorrow is about whether the legislature will create a multi-million-dollar hole in the 2013 budget, a hole that begins on day one, January 1st, or whether they will approve a balanced budget. It is quite clear, based on the comments not only from this office, but the Comptroller's Office, as well as the Erie County Fiscal Stability Authority, that the amendment is unrealistic and irresponsible. The County Comptroller's analysis says so, and he stated that, and his office stated that earlier. And today, the chairman of the Control Board testified before the legislature, and in the board's written analysis, it notes that my budget is reasonable and balanced, whereas the proposed amendments are risky, creating, and I quote, concern that would lead the ECFSA to have to reevaluate whether the budget is in balance and whether the 4-year plan is achievable, end quote, and therefore is reasonable. Folks, when was the last time the county executive, the county controller, and the Erie County Fiscal Stability Authority truthfully agreed on anything? But we do on this budget and the proposed amendment. Since I was first elected as controller in 2005, I have vowed, above all else, I will ensure that Erie County will never go down the path to fiscal irresponsibility again. Should legislators still choose to do what is easy but wrong, on day one, the 2013 budget will be out of balance. And as ECFSA noted in their analysis of the proposed amendments, the 4-year financial plan will have significant budget gaps going forward, gaps that could trigger a hard control board. I will at that point be left with no choice to do what is right, though difficult, to ensure that the budget balances at the end of the year. Not only will I be forced to veto every single addition the legislature has included in their amendment, but I will be forced to re-examine every single line of non-mandated expenses to overcome these budget gaps. Folks, there will be no sacred cows. Everything will be on the table, and everyone will have to share in the burden created if the legislators refuse to do the right thing tomorrow. To even attempt to meet the 300% increase as proposed by the legislature in the vacancy savings, we will impose a hiring freeze across all county departments that I can control, and we will request from the legislature that they do the same thing with the independently elected officials. We will re-examine funding for DMV offices and Erie Community College. We will reduce spending in the county's division of highways and will not conduct all of the proposed 2013 capital projects, as folks, there will not be enough revenue in future years to pay for the debt associated with those projects. We unfortunately might have to reduce funding for the Cornell Cooperative Extension, which is the 4-H program, as well as the Erie County Soil and Water Conservation District. We might be forced to reduce funding for erosion control and Operation Prime Time, and in all likelihood there would be an across-the-board cut to all of the cultural organizations. And we will continue until we have found enough real cuts to make up the shortfall that could be created tomorrow in the 2013 budget, because the proposed amendment that has been laid on the table by the 6 legislators doesn't actually come up with real cuts. Lastly, I need to warn the public that these bogus cuts will hurt budgets not only in 2013, but in years thereafter. If they are going to choose to cut revenue, but not actually cut real expenses, they will compound and create even a larger problem for 2014 and beyond. Budget holes, as the control board noted, would grow year in and year out after. If these legislators refuse a property tax increase this year, they will leave this administration, this county, no other option to potentially face a property tax increase in 2014. That is something I said if my budget was passed as proposed, we would not have to do. We might have to. Every year we're presented with the opportunity to do some great things for our community. And already this year we've done tremendous things. I believe the budget that I propose builds upon that success and makes the most of the opportunities that we've been presented with today. My budget ensures we meet the mandated expenses in an honest and responsible way. It's a budget that continues to provide a high level of service to our constituents and makes the kind of infrastructure and quality of life investments that fuel economic development here and will help our community take advantage of the great renaissance that we are experiencing. Unfortunately, if the budget is amended as proposed, it will take us back down the path towards a red green fiscal crisis in which elected officials are afraid to make tough decisions and choose easy ones that are wrong. Throughout this process, I have worked to keep the lines of communication open, and I do believe that we can compromise. I do not believe that compromise is a dirty word, unlike others. That's why earlier today I sat down with all members of the legislature in 2 different meetings, one last time in hopes of reaching a compromise and avoiding the sort of self-inflicted damage to the county that this community has unfortunately seen for many years. Again, I remind everyone, governing is about choices, and a budget sets the agenda for those choices. We may not all agree on what to add or what to cut, and I accept that fact. And I do accept the fact that if the legislature makes cuts, they have to be real cuts. But what I cannot accept, and will not accept, is a budget that forces tough decisions on day one with even tougher decisions in the future because legislators refuse to make the tough decisions today. I have a responsibility to the residents of Erie County, and I take that responsibility very seriously. We will do what is necessary if the budget is passed tomorrow with these amendments to ensure that that budget balances in the end. But unfortunately, the decisions that we take will not be ones we wanted to, but we will have to. And the public may not be pleased in the long run with the results. Thank you. At this time, I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mark, anything